What countries do Americans think are the safest? That's a great question. So great that USA News ran a survey and came up with a list. As I read this list, I sort of agreed with most of them. I was very wrong. So wrong, I only got 1 out of the top 10. With more Americans than ever contemplating leaving the United States, one of the biggest concerns is safety. Most Americans have a preconceived notion about the countries they probably won't get croaked in. In this video, we will look at the countries Americans think have the lowest murder rate and what country really goes in that place. A few small countries haven't had a murder in years, but they have such a low population the sample size is too small to be included. I will list those after number 2, just so you know. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 13, Portugal, the ultimate no-worries country. With a relaxed lifestyle, stunning coastlines, and a crime rate so low it almost seems fictional, Portugal is a dream destination for anyone seeking peace, beauty, and really good food. In Portugal, you can wander historic towns, sip wine by the sea, and actually enjoy life without constantly checking over your shoulder. It's the kind of place where stress just doesn't exist past which place has the best wine. If you've ever been to Portugal, you can see why people think it's one of the safest countries. The residents are decent and, for the most part, very happy and welcoming. This is how safe the place is. I searched famous Portugal murders, and the Lisbon Ripper serial killer came up. I thought, ooh, interesting. Let's see what this sick loser did. This guy had rookie numbers. The Lisbon Ripper was an unidentified serial killer who, between 1992 and 1993, yes, way back then, murdered 3 working girls in Lisbon. Does that even qualify as a serial killer? Here in the US, we get weirdos that kill by the dozens. Now, people thought 13 was Portugal, but no, 13 is actually Norway with 0.47 murders per 100,000 residents. Portugal is actually the 30th in the top 200 countries with 0.79 per 100,000 residents. Number 12, Iceland, a place where even nature respects your safety. Iceland isn't just safe, it's magically safe. Here, crime is practically mythical, and the biggest danger you'll face is Mother Nature herself, because, volcanoes. But even with its dramatic landscapes of glaciers, waterfalls, and geysers, the country itself is a dream for those seeking peace and tranquility. No crime, no stress, just northern lights and hot springs. Now, I searched famous Iceland murders. They didn't have much. There were never more than 3 murders yearly between 2010 and 2019. However, in 2020, 5 people fell victim to murders on the island, an unusually high number in the country. In 2022, there were 4 homicide victims in Iceland. That's it. Currently, they have a population of about 400,000 residents, and they get tons of visitors every year. I wouldn't say tons, but they get quite a few. But if you actually look at their famous ones, they've only had 3 since the 1800s. So everyone thinks Iceland is the 12th safest country. It is not. Italy is with 0.57 murders per every 100,000 residents. Iceland is actually 33rd, and on average, they get 0.89 murders for every 100,000 residents. Number 11, Ireland, where even the rain feels welcoming. Ireland is the land of rolling green hills, friendly folks, and pubs that feel like a warm hug. The country is very safe, about as safe as it is beautiful, making it a top pick for travelers who like their vacations free of crime and full of cozy vibes. Sure, the weather can be shit, but that adds a little charm. As far as murders go, not that many. They do have a good amount of assaults, but that's usually drunken bar things. At least that's what people think. There have been a good number of murders in Ireland. Matter of fact, back in 2023, they had the Dublin riots. In November of 2023, riots break out in Dublin following a mass stabbing by a man from Algeria. In 2022, they had 3, 2021, they had 1, and in 2020, they had 1, but it was weird because the guy mugged basically a gangster. Gangster found out who he was, and his friends went over, and it got ugly. But everyone thinks Ireland is number 11. It is not. Bahrain is number 11 with 0.52 murders for every 100,000 residents. Ireland is actually 31st with 0.87 for every 100,000 residents. Number 10, Belgium. Land of waffles, chocolate, and zero worries. Belgium is best known for its legendary chocolate, its beer, and its waffles. But did you know that it's also one of the safest countries in the world? This tiny European nation has a low crime rate and an efficient public transportation system, and people are too busy enjoying the culinary masterpieces to engage in anything remotely dangerous. With charming medieval towns, a government that actually works, and streets so clean, they make your kitchen floor look questionable. Belgium is underrated and a gem of safety. At least that's what people think. I mean, it is safe, don't get me wrong. So right here, I should give you the story about Belgium's serial killer. But I'm not going to. I started reading about this one, and it was so upsetting, I didn't finish recording the video. I had to stop there and finish up the video the next day. It screwed me up. Don't look up Belgian serial killers or anything like that. It was rough, so don't do that, okay? But Belgium had an ugly one. Now back to the video. Now everyone thinks Belgium is the 10th safest country in the world. It is not. Brunei is, with 0.49 murders for every 100,000 residents. Belgium is actually 65th, with 1.69. Number 9, Australia, where everything is dead except the crime rates. Yes, Australia has giant spiders, venomous snakes, and sharks the size of minivans. But when it comes to actual crime, it's one of the safest places on the planet. At least that's what most people think. With a low violent crime rate and relaxed lifestyle and healthcare that won't bankrupt you, Australia is basically a paradise as long as you don't provoke the local wildlife. Now, Australia does have a lot more murders than most people think. Everyone seems to think that since 1996, when they, for the most part, got rid of firearms, everything has been a warm, fuzzy blanket of safety. It has not been. They've had murders and shootings every single year. But if you don't know, Port Arthur in Tasmania, which is part of Australia, had a horrific shooting back on April 28th, 1996. Some coward went to a local tourist area and had a little breakfast with a giant duffel bag next to him that nobody questioned. After his breakfast, he went outside and started popping off rounds. 35 people were lost that day. It was horrific. I still think if you're a mass shooter, they should call you the coward. Like the guy who shot Jesse James in the back. For the rest of his life, he was known as the coward Robert Ford. So everyone thinks Australia is number 9. It is actually Slovenia with 0.48 murders for every 100,000 residents. Australia is actually tied with Iceland with 0.89 murders for every 100,000 residents. Number 8, New Zealand, where safety comes with a side of adventure. New Zealand is proof that you don't have to choose between thrill-seeking and peace of mind. This country offers insanely beautiful landscapes, from snowy peaks to tropical beaches, all while keeping the crime levels ridiculously low. You can hike, kayak, and explore your heart's content without worrying about anything, except maybe running into an aggressive sheep. Now, obviously, New Zealand being a, fairly large country when it comes to population and kind of size, it's going to have some murders. I mean, they've got 4.5 million residents. But I did notice one thing. They've had one school shooting, and it was almost 100 years ago in 1923. A man that had moved to New Zealand from Canada and was apparently a firewood salesman had a problem with the school. They sent truancy officers to his house because he made his kids stay home from school and watch over his property. This was one of a series of problems he had been having. His chickens had died, bees were stolen from the hives, and people's cattle grazed on his land after his fences were cut. He blamed all his neighbors. And of course, the locals made fun of him all the time because he was filled with conspiracies. 2 people died, 6 were injured, and he got a life sentence. His family went back to Canada and changed their name. New Zealand is not the 8th safest country in the world. It's actually Norway with 0.47 murders for every 100,000 residents. New Zealand is actually 29th with 0.74. That's not bad. In case you think these numbers are high, keep in mind here in the United States, we have 5.7 for every 100,000 residents. A little bit of a difference. Number 7, Finland, where happiness and safety go hand in hand. Finland isn't just one of the safest countries in the world, it's actually the happiest. Maybe it's its gorgeous landscapes, its social stability, and the fact that saunas exist in every corner of this country. Yeah, they do. They got a lot of really nice ones. Here, crime is so rare that people actually trust their neighbors. The only thing remotely dangerous in Finland? Trying to survive winter without enough coffee. But Finland is not as safe as you might think it is. They do have their fair share of murders. 2024 was exceptional. The first 9 months of the year, they had 75 suspected homicides. Everyone seems to think Finland is number 7. It is in fact not. United Arab Emirate, or UAE, is number 7 with 0.46 murders for every 100,000 residents. Finland is actually ranked 53rd with 1.63 murders for every 100,000 residents. Number 6, Canada. Politeness is the law here. Canada is where the people are so nice that apologizing is practically the national sport. If it wasn't for hockey, they could go with apologizing. Funny that they're so nice and so friendly and so courteous, and then they're like the best country at hockey, which is a very violent sport. One of the most violent sports probably after boxing and MMA. With low crime rates, universal healthcare, and landscapes that look like nature hired the best graphic designers, it's no surprise Canada makes this list. Whether you're exploring Vancouver's mountains, Toronto's skyline, or Montreal's charming streets, you'll feel freer than a moose in a nature reserve. The biggest risk? Saying A, unironically, after a few weeks. Canada has quite a few murderers that are famous. They've had a few serial killers, and most people think that they're very safe because they're such nice people. Now, they are pretty safe compared to their neighbor to the south, the United States, but they're just not as safe as people think they are. People think Canada's the 6th safest country in the world. It's actually Indonesia with 0.43 murders for every 100,000 residents. Canada is actually 68 with 1.76 murders for every 100,000 people. Number 5, Denmark. Denmark doesn't just rank high in safety, it also tops the list of one of the happiest countries in the world. Coincidence? Probably not. With its efficient government, strong social welfare system, and a crime rate so low, it might make you question reality. Denmark is a safe haven for both residents and visitors. Plus, Copenhagen's bike-friendly streets make it easy to explore without fear, unless, of course, you're bad at cycling. I imagine if you're wearing those wooden shoes they're so famous for, you would be bad at cycling. And stop typing. Yes, Holland is where the wooden shoes are famous, not Denmark. And by the way, Holland is not a country. It's actually a foreign province of Denmark on its western coast. Now, I looked around at some of their interesting murders, and in 2017, a journalist went on a submarine, like a private submarine, with the owner of the submarine to do a story or whatever, and turns out he was a bit of a nut job and killed her. Then he scuttled, sank his own submarine and set himself adrift and tried to claim she died. Well, then she started washing up on shore and she didn't drown. It was pretty gross. That was the murder of Kim Wall, if you want to read about it. Most people think Denmark goes here at number 5, but no, it is actually Qatar or Qatar, whatever you want to call it, with 0.37 murders for every 100,000 residents. Denmark is actually 39th with 1.01 murders for every 100,000 residents. Number 4, Austria. Mozart, mountains, and a crime rate lower than your patience for tourists. Austria is like that one friend who has everything together. Beautiful cities, jaw-dropping Alps, a rich history, and a crime rate that is practically non-existent. Here you could walk through Vienna's historic streets, hike the Alps, and get lost in Salzburg's musical heritage without worrying about a thing. Austria is proof that safety and scenic perfection can go hand in hand. Austria has its fair share of murders. Most of them are done with knives. They just had one 5 days ago on the 15th of February 2025. The perpetrator was an Islamic extremist, so it's classified as a terror attack, not like a serial killer type thing. He only killed one and injured 5 others. But most people think this is where Austria goes. It does not go here. Luxembourg does with 0.34 murders for every 100,000 residents. Austria is actually 37th with 0.97 murders for every 100,000. Number 3, Sweden. Sweden, where safety comes with free healthcare and amazing scenery. Sweden has been perfecting the art of safety for centuries. With low crime rates, efficient public services, and a reputation for social harmony, this Scandinavian paradise is about as stress-free as life gets. Want to roam the forests, lakes, and charming towns without a worry? Sweden's got you. Plus, public transportation is so efficient you'll never fear getting stranded and getting killed, unless, of course, you forget how cold Swedish winters can be. Sweden often shows up as the safest country. A lot of people seem to think Sweden is number one. This survey has them coming in at number 3, but I've seen so many different surveys where people say Sweden is the safest country in the world. It is not. They actually have teenage gangs. They've had to team up with Denmark in recent years because the gangs have been going over the border to kill the other gang and stuff like that. They've had a little bit of a problem with this, and now they're working together to stop all this nonsense. But everyone thinks Sweden is number 3. It is Oman at number 3 with 0.27 murders for every 100,000 residents. Sweden is actually 40th with 1.08 murders. That's still not bad. I mean, they're in the top 25%. Number 2, Norway, where even the fjords feel safe. Now that's kind of strange. Norway, Denmark, and Sweden are all right next to each other, along with Finland at number 7. Actually, they're 53rd, but everyone thought they were number 7. Overall, it's the safest region in the world. I mean, most the Nordic region is on this list. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. I guess they're only missing Greenland, the Faroe Islands, and Åland. If you've never heard of Åland, it's kind of its own autonomous anomaly. It's part of Finland, but everyone there speaks Swedish. Anyway, back to Norway. Norway does have its fair share of murders. Not that many, but they do have them. Matter of fact, a few years back, some clown decided to take a hunting rifle to a summer camp, start hunting people. But most people think this is where you'll find Norway. No, this is where you'll find Japan with 0.26 murders for every 100,000 residents. And that's a very populous country. This is a perfect example of culture, keeping people in line. Norway is actually 13th with 0.47, which is completely respectable. It's just not number 2. All right, before we get to number 1, I thought I'd share with you the 4 countries with a 0.00 murder rate. First of all, the Isle of Man, which is an island in the Irish Sea between, let's say, Liverpool and Belfast. If you draw a line between them, you see Isle of Man. But it is a British island territory. You also have San Marino, which is a landlocked country surrounded by Italy, east of Florence. Then you have Andorra, which is on the border of France and Spain. It's been its own country for over 750 years, which is crazy considered France and Spain have a history of conquering whatever isn't nailed down. It honestly is like there's the border, and then the border just kind of goes around Andorra. It's like the people of Andorra said, we don't like either of you people. We're not joining either one of your clubs. They got a good thing going on there. Andorra's beautiful. It's small, and they have the lowest tax rate in the world. The last one is Monaco with 0.00 murders for every 100,000 residents. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Switzerland, the country that invented neutrality. It's no surprise Switzerland, home of precise watches, perfect chocolate, and a permanently neutral political stance, is one of the safest countries on the planet. But it's not the safest. It does have a low crime rate, impeccable public transportation, and landscapes that look like a Windows wallpaper in real life. Switzerland is practically a stress-free paradise, unless, of course, you're trying to afford anything there because it's terribly expensive. Switzerland has one of the highest gun ownership rates in the world, and it's still one of the safest. And this is because they have this thing called Swiss militia system, which requires men over 20 to be ready for a call to service, meaning they don't really have a big army, if at all. So if you're able to fight, you got to have your gun at the house. I had a Swiss soldier. He was stationed with us for 2 years when I was at Fort Ord, and he kind of gave us the rundown that, could be invaded any time. They want the citizens to have a gun on hand in case they need to fight. But they did have one horrific mass murder. Some clown disguised himself as a police officer and went into their parliament in a city called Zug, which it looks like Zug to us Americans. But in 2001, a couple weeks after 9/11, this clown went into the Swiss parliament, into a room where there was 80 members of parliament, and started shooting. He also tossed a bomb in there. It was hard for everyone to escape because there was only one door. Luckily, and sadly also, only 14 people perished, and he pushed his own off button. So it's not the safest place in the world. Actually, out of these countries that are big enough, Singapore is the safest with 0.16 murders for every 100,000 residents. Switzerland is actually 22nd with 0.59 murders for every 100,000 residents. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, you probably like one of the two videos being suggested right now. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.